So when did this trouble start for you?
I kind of grew up fast. 4 brothers and 3 sisters. Well, it was 7 of us. I'm the youngest boy and the next to the youngest out of 7. So I don't know. I always had like a hustle in me. Living in Oakland and all the colleges, I used to go door to door to the apartments and ring all the bells and take out their garbage, go to store for them, make money. And this is like 77. I was doing that legally, yeah. And that's when I kind of like fell in love with money, because back then, $1 was a lot of money. And so, be wrestling with my brothers and them, and your pockets jingle and everybody freeze like, who got money? And I was like, oh, that's what that do. So I kind of, and then we had some bad influences in our neighborhood. So we started smoking young, drinking young, doing all kinds of stuff. My mom and dad went out a lot. So my brothers and them, they were criminal minded, my older brother. So it just started a cycle. And then it was like a lot of us, so only 2 of the kids wasn't like criminal minded. We used to get into everything.
So when did you catch your first offense, your criminal offense?
Well, as a juvenile, I pretty much was slick when I was real young, but when I moved to the Hill, that's where I got street smart at. It was a lot of people stealing cars. You're talking about 84, 85. The world was becoming materialistic. At that time, my dad was like in and out of jail, from house to house. He had a mistress that he started spending half of his time there, half of the time at home with all his kids, and then the other times he was out with his mistress. So I started boosting to keep up with the times.
Explain to the audience what boosting is.
Boosting is stealing clothes. That was, the drugs was being sold, but young people back then didn't sell drugs. Even to the point that, when you was young, you wasn't even allowed on the set. They called the drug strip the set, Center Avenue, Wally Avenue. That's where they sold all the coke and all the, all the heroin. But you wasn't even allowed to hang down there as a kid if you wasn't out of high school. Like the older guys would run you out of there. There was like guardrails for the youth until crack. So when I started boosting because I did it out of anger. For my 15th birthday, I think it was my 14th or 15th. It was my 14th birthday. I told my mom and dad, I asked them to get me some top 10 Adidas. They was just coming out. And I never had anything named brand. And I said, well, you don't have to get me no school clothes next year. You don't have to get me nothing for Christmas. All I want is these shoes. I said, if you can't afford them, then don't worry about it. But there's a fake pair that GC Murphy sell.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know the difference. So if you can't afford it, don't get me nothing. And they bought me the fake ones.
Oh, no.
And I didn't know the difference, so I put them on and I walked to the K-Boys Club. And it's winter because my birthday's in December, and I'm styling. I ain't paying no attention. I got new kicks on my feet, and I go up in the K-Boy Club and I'm shooting pool. And there was a clique of guys that my age, a little older, maybe a year older, that hung around together. Will, Maurice, Woody, that little clique, and they was in there shooting pool. He looked at me and he was like, okay, Walt. At that time, they called me Walt, not Wally. I got Wally from my homies on the Hill.
Okay.
But he's like, okay, Walt, I see you got the new top 10s on. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. And he like, the difference is mine say Adidas and yours don't say nothing. And so I looked, and now I'm embarrassed. And then he said, mine's got a blue bottom and yours ain't got no bottom. And so I'm sitting there and I'm embarrassed, and I'm thinking he gonna clown me, that he gonna put me on blast. But he kept putting his finger to his mouth like he ain't gonna tell nobody. So I kept shooting pool, playing it off. And until he wasn't paying no attention, and I dipped out. And I was so hurt, like, because I was embarrassed, and I asked my mom and them not to do that. And my dad had some money at the time because my dad was a master carpenter, master builder, and he had just got a contract. And he had partnered with Talent Fields dudes that was down on Fifth Avenue, and he got a lot of money up front. And I knew they could afford it, and it kind of like cut me to my heart, and I kind of like rebelled. I made a vow that I was never going to need anybody for anything. And my favorite cousin, my cousin Derek, his mom used to buy him name brand stuff because it was just him and his little sister. But just at school time. So I was starting to see him with a lot of stuff that I know his mom ain't buy. And right then I had put it together that he had to be boosting. He had to be stealing that stuff. So I went to his house. He lived on Center right across from the number 2 police station and apartments. And it's funny, when I was going down past the old theater, now, when I was walking to the K-Boys Club at first, you know, I was just cool as can be. But now I'm slipping on the ice. I'm falling because I'm realizing my shoes is plastic. And I'm crying. You know what I mean? I'm 14. My heart is crushed. And that vow, I kept that vow. I went to his house. He was like, "What's wrong? Who did something?" I was like, "No, man, teach me how to steal." He like, "What?" I'm like, "Teach me how to steal." He taught me how to steal, and I just became like one of the best boosters in the city.
So how did you keep this away from your parents?
Well, I didn't. They knew I had clothes that they wasn't buying. I remember in '86, we used to have boosting contests at Allegheny Academy. That's a juvenile placement. It's not a placement where you spend the night, but after school, you got to go to the academy and be there all day.
I know about the kid.
Okay, so I was in the Allegheny Academy. There was a lot of boosters around the city. East Liberty, St. Clair, Homewood. We used to go against each other. We all try to get the same day off, the academy, and then we show back up the next day, and whoever got the fly stuff. So I remember one time it was Hill versus Homewood, but East Liberty went with Homewood, and the guys that was from the Hill, we went out to Century 3 Mall. We ain't really do too good. I mean, we got some outfits, but when the East Liberty van pulled up that day, they got off the van and everybody had polo coats, polo gooses. I don't know what took me to Parkway Center Mall, which was Monday, and I got a nanny goat.
Was that popular back then?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was a fur coat. That's all it was. No one had fur coats. The drug dealers didn't even have fur coats. And it was hot. So I showed up at the academy Monday with a fur on. So yeah, I was one of the best boosters in the city.
So how did it go from boosting to
drugs?
Yes.
So with boosting became like so easy for me. That I started making a lot of money. Like, my mom moved from the Hill to Clairton to get me out of that, but I kept going back to the Hill. I stopped going to school. Clairton High School was being remodeled at the time, so we only had to go half a day. So when I did go to school, as soon as I got out of school, I would shoot out to the Hill, get my driver, ride to like 4 or 5 malls. By now, I'm boosting the hustle. So, you know, I'm not boosting the dress. Like, I got everything that they ever made 5 times. And now I'm filling up bags and taking them to the fence. Perfume was my best hustle. You know what I mean? Because it was a lot of bottles of perfume on the counter. So it only take 10 seconds to take 30 bottles of perfume. That's $300. And then, you know, like the dudes that I hung with, some boosted, some stole cars, some snatched money bags. Everybody had a hustle, and it was a lot of us. And we hung at Reed and Roberts, and then I had my crew that was from Burroughs up top, and they boosted, and we was just real known. So I never went to juvenile. I only been to the academy, and then out of Schumann. In '88, I caught a case. And they sent me to Vision Quest.
Okay, and this is from you boosting? Okay.
Now the boosting, I had a lot of boosting offenses, but I used aliases. Like when I would go out boosting, I had a girl that was a real good friend of mine, and she would sit at home, and I kind of knew the law, so I knew what they could take you to Schumann for, what they couldn't take you to Schumann for. It had to have a certain amount, a dollar amount, and if you run and make them chase you, they're automatically taking you to Schumann. So I knew the whole game. So I never went to Schumann. So I get caught in the store and I give them a fake name, a fake address, fake mom and dad's name. And then they'll ask me for a phone number and I give them the girl's number and they'll call her and she'll play the game. And sometimes I remember I got caught in the store, the same store, by the same person 2 days in a row. And I gave him 2 different names. And he put my picture on the wall next to the picture he took the day before.
Oh, wow. He didn't even notice.
Because this time I had on a hat and some glasses. And so in 88, I went to jail for a robbery. I was at the mall to Boost, but I was at Parkway Center Mall. They didn't have nothing. By this time, I'm driving myself to the mall. I had a van. I seen a woman with one of them hospital things on, and it looked like she had a whole bunch of money in the pocket, and I snatched the pocket. And I had my cousin with me from Clariton, and instead of running with me, he ran away from me. And I'm driving, so I ran to the parking lot, ducked down, got in my van, and left. And then I was like, I can't leave him out there because he's going to get caught. And so I drove back up there, and they had already, he had told them that I was in the green van. He was already caught. And so when I drove back in the parking lot, they arrested me. I ended up going to Vision Quest. When I came out of Vision Quest, the whole world had changed. Crack. Everything had changed.
How long were you in Vision Quest?
15 months.
15 months. How did you change in Vision Quest?
Well, I mean, the world changed. I didn't change. Now, Vision Quest was a real good experience. It taught me a lot. It wasn't like just being in a juvenile facility. In Vision Quest, you live in teepees like Indians. Yeah, and you start in wilderness camp. No, it's called, I forget what the first part of the program is, but it's 3 months. And you're living in teepees, but it's on a platform that got heat in the winter. And then after 3 months of that, if you do that, past that right, you go on a hike, which takes a month. You're hiking for a whole month. You do a stress hike, 3 days without food. And then you go to wagon train. That's where you spend most of your time at. The wagon train is a train of wagons and horses that travel from Florida to Maine.
Wow.
And it's a real nice program.
Oh, you're saying it's a nice program. I'm sitting there like hiking and not eating for 3 days. I'm like,
I mean, that's just one little, the whole, what they teach you, like they do sweats, like Indians, in little canvases. You go in there with just your boxers on, and it's a pit of hot rocks, and you meditate and talk about issues. It was for a juvenile program. It really taught me some real life stuff, and it showed me a different lifestyle, something different than the city. I was thinking when I get older, I might go work there. But when I came home, like I said, crack hit, and a lot of my friends were strung out already in 15 months.
How old were you guys at this time?
I was 17 when I went to Vision Quest, but I was going on 18. So they sentenced me in like August, like maybe 4 months before I turned 18. And so I was 18 when I came home.
Wow, and you get home and most of your friends are on crack.
People
wow.
are on crack. Everybody's hustling. Like when I went to Vision Quest, you had people that just went to school, graduated, was going to get a job or go to college. Everybody wasn't in the street, and everybody still was living their life. They still had their youth, like, house parties. You didn't have to worry about getting shot. All you had to worry about was fighting.
So were there some guys that were selling drugs and somebody that were using, or were they like doing both?
Both. Not everybody was doing both.
The majority.
Like the guys that never been in trouble, them were the guys that didn't get high. Like the dudes I hung around with, like we used to snort powder. I never got high off of coke. I used to snort it just because if you had powder, it meant you had money. So if you walking around sniffing, it was a status thing because powder was expensive. All my friends who used to snort powder, they started getting hooked on powder. I never even got high off of it. All it would do is make my throat numb. and my nose sniff. But I started seeing them getting strung out. So when I came out of Vision Quest, all the guys who did powder were strung out on crack. They were smoking bop bops. That's when you put crack in the cigarette. Or primos, you put crack in the weed. They were strung out, and guys that were really strong-minded were, and so I never tried crack. But everybody was hustling. Everybody was making money, so, you know, I jumped right into that, and I was stuck in there until federal prison.
Okay. You want to talk about your first, you said federal offense?
Well, no, my first case was a state case.
It was a state case?
I left the Hill. I wasn't going to hustle on the Hill. Hill was too dangerous. Before I went in, I had a couple of my friends had started hustling on the set powder right before I went in '88. It started changing a little bit. A couple young guys started going there. When I first moved to the Hill, that was against the rule. But these guys were like in their senior years of high school. Some of them graduated, but they started hustling. I tried to hustle one time. The first time I tried, I got robbed. I didn't get robbed of everything. I gave him what I wanted to give him, but I was like, the Center Avenue ain't for me. Like, you know what I mean? So when I came back out and crack was out, I said, I definitely ain't hustling on the Hill. A couple of my friends had migrated to Westgate. We used to go to house parties out there. Guys had girls out there, started making babies out there. So I went out there on the west side, and that's where I started hustling at.
Okay.
I caught my first case. It was a drug sale in 1992. I got sentenced and went to prison for 2 to 4.
2 to 4 years. 2
to 4. And the case that I caught was like, I couldn't believe that they sent me to prison for it. It was my first offense. It was 0.8 of a gram. And it only held, the guidelines was only 3 to 6 months. Anybody else would have got probation. But because of my juvenile record, it made me a 6 on the scale. And they had just passed the law that they can't use your record in court, but they can use it in sentencing. So I was a 0 on the scale, but my juvenile record made me a 6, which my guidelines went from 3 to 6 months to 24 to 60 months. And they offered me 24 months. So I went to trial. I lost. They still didn't have to sentence me under that. They could have sentenced me anywhere from 3 months, but they sentenced me to the 24 months, and I went to the wall.
So at this time, were you thinking, maybe I should change my life around? This is not working for me.
Not at all.
What was your mindset?
I was mad because they gave me so much time. I knew guys who had 5 cases like mine and never even seen prison. My first offense, I'm going to prison. And I went to sentencing from the streets. And I really was going to go on a run, which they probably would have still gave me 24 months. But I was like, let's see what they do. So when they sentenced me, you know, they took me into custody, and I went to the county jail. And the next day, they came and picked me up, took me down the wall. So, you know, first time in prison, it's kind of scary. But, you know, especially Western. Western was a penitentiary. It was a rough jail. And so I'm in intake. They dress you out, make you shower, this and that. And then they walk you through population yards. So, you know, it looked kind of scary. Big guys, weights, you know what I mean? Big 6 foot, you know what I mean? It looked crazy. It looked like something from the movie. But the clinic. But as soon as I got to the clinic and they opened that gate, all my friends. Wally, what's up? Matter of fact, I'm walking through the thing. Somebody sploughed me up and gave me 3 bags of weed.
In the jail?
Yeah, they got everything in the jail. Like Western was a party. I was in the clinic for 13 months. I didn't even want to leave. I would have done all my time in the clinic. Like, jail became a hustle. You have your people bring you drugs in balloons. You swallow them, poop them out, and hustle.
How old were you?
That was 92. I was 21 going on 22. I got sentenced June 4th, 1992. The day before my sentencing, I went to see my attorney, and he was like, "You might be all right. I ain't gonna say you is. We'll see." He was like, "Here, go to the Pirates game." That was the last time the Pirates were good, and they lost 4 in a row. I didn't go to the Pirate game, but yeah, I don't know why. I could have caught a case while I was in there. I got caught with weed while I was in the hole. In the hole, you still had contact visits.
Wow.
And I got caught with weed while I was in the hole. And they didn't even do nothing but extended my time. No, they took my visits for the rest of the time I was in the hole. But I was in the hole for something I didn't do, something they just made up. I had 60 days in the hole. And I had to admit to doing it. Because they said if I didn't admit to it, then they would have gave me the maximum, and I would have been in the hole for 6 months.
So what was it like being in the hole?
Other than seeing outside, because they let you have yard every day, but you're just in a cage. It was nothing. It's quiet time. Don't nobody want to be in a hole, but when you're there, you're there.
For the people that don't know, the hole is solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement, yeah. Down the wall, I hooked up with a Muslim guy from Philly. He was, I forget his position, but he was in the Nation of Islam. I ended up hooking him up with my sister. He was like, he said, "Young Groove," he yelled over to my cell. He was like, I heard you got caught with some weed. Now, I had been in the hole for like 30 days already when I got caught with the weed on a visit. He was like, "Coming at you." They rip the linen from the sheets and make a rope out of it, and they'll tie like a bottle of lotion to it, and then they'll fish.
I was about to say, isn't that called fishing?
Yeah, yep. Fishing. So he threw the line over and gave me a couple bags of weed. And I'm like, this dude got weed in the hole? So me and my cellie smoked that night, and then I went out to the yard, started hollering at him. Me and him became close. I introduced him to my sister, and he taught me how to set up a nonprofit so that I can send my money out to jail that I was hustling, making without getting detected by the jail.
So you're 22 years old in prison. What was your support system like? Because I know you mentioned your sister was around. Was your support system strong? Like, how was it?
We got a tight family, so, and I was kind of the bread getter in the family, so I always got a strong support system when I'm in jail. Now, my girlfriend, that's another story. But family, yeah, family was always there.
At this time, you're in prison. You're still, I don't want to say you're not getting it, but you're still not realizing this isn't probably the best, plan for you.
No, like I said, I was mad because I got that much time, so I wasn't even thinking. I was prison ain't a place for rehabilitation. It's not. The only way you're getting rehabilitated in prison is if you've made up your mind that you don't want to go back to prison.
When did you make up your mind that you didn't want to go back?
Well, my next bit was I got out in 94, right back to the streets, right back to hustling, right back to making money. I always make a lot of money, but I always go broke before I go to jail. So, and I'm always up and down, and I was back doing what I do, running back and forth out of state. I was buying some property. I had an end goal, but you get addicted to the lifestyle, and you feel like you can't get caught, and you start living in a whole nother reality. So my second case was a home invasion, which that's not my style. I never rob, especially my own people. The situation was something personal. My oldest sister passed away from AIDS.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
We watched her die. That was my partner right there. She was real street smart. And my older sister was hustling, too. She was into the streets, into a lot of different things. She was hustling. She was selling to a lot of closet smokers. That's what they call them. People that's not out there in the street. They don't want people to know that they get high. So she was making all her money on the 1st and 15th of the month. So she would they would spend their checks with her, and then they would ask her for credit until they get paid again. So she would charge them double. She was doing her thing. She was a survivor. She had a son. She named him after me. Her daughter. She had a daughter, Quala. That's my heart. She's just like her mom. She's successful. Never been in any trouble. Honor roll, college, big house, marriage. She's the one everybody look up to, for us, the second generation behind us. Anyway, when she passed away, my little sister just graduated, was in CCAC, and she was pregnant with her first kid, and she started hustling. She was on maternity leave, and she started hustling on my sister that passed away's clientele. My little sister was buying drugs from a guy, and he was charging her a high price, and he was fronting her. I ain't gonna lie, his work was better than mine too. I ain't a jealous type of dude. My uncle came, and my uncle got high, and he was like, let me get something, nephew. I was like, all right. He was like, is it the same thing Vet got? My little sister. And I'm like, no, why? He's like, well, she got that fire. I'm like, man, who is Vet hustling for? Find out who Vet's hustling for. Because I told all the dudes, they got the work, they got the weight out there. I told them, listen, don't sell nothing to my little sister. I want her to go back to school when her maternity leave is done. If she start tasting this money, she ain't gonna do that. Like, and she about to have a baby. I don't want her in jail. I don't want to lose her like I just lost my other sister to the streets. Right. Most of the guys was like, they was like, got you, black man. And then a lot of the dudes I supplied, but she was working for a dude, one of the dudes that got all the money out there. And I stepped to them. He had his little goons because he wasn't about that street life. They just get a lot of money. It's a lot of money out there. So he had a bunch of goons. This is in 96, 97. So I stepped to him about it, and he was, once my uncle told me it was him, I stepped to him, was like, yo, you selling drugs to my little sister? And he was like, why? I'm like, what do you mean, why? If you are, you need to stop. He was like, no, I ain't passing up no money or something like that. And I was like, well, I'm coming to get that. And he was like, well, you know where I'm at. Like, all right. I wasn't even thinking about it till I went broke. I had a gambling habit. I lost about 20-something racks shooting dice out there one day.
Wow.
The town think that that's why I robbed him. That was my excuse. And then the day that it happened, I ran into my uncle, and he was like, Vet said she just came from old boy's house, and he had 2 keys on the table. And my money was funny. I said, yeah, I'm going to get that. So I went in his house. The guy that I took with me, he was supposed to keep everybody laid down, and he didn't. And then I went upstairs, and his grandmother and grandfather lived upstairs. Like, we tried the door to get upstairs, and it was locked. Make a long story short, I apologized to them older people, told them I was sorry, and was like, let's go. But the guy had got away. The dude downstairs let him, walked away and left them by themselves. He got away, so went downstairs. The police was already on the scene. So I ended up trapped in the house. They called hostage negotiators. I came out on CNN.
Oh, wow.
And the whole town showed up. One thing I regretted, that was the biggest thing I regretted. The older people, they space. Nobody deserved to be invaded like that. So I came out on CNN. They ended up giving me 6 to 18 years for that. Oh. Plus I was on parole. So they gave me, I owed them 3 years from the 24 to 60 month. So I ended up doing 9 years and 10 months.
So you have a very interesting story in prison. You want to talk about the process and what happened to you in prison?
Yeah, so during that 9 years and 10 months, I knew I had to change something. And then I started realizing I'm too smart to keep coming back to prison. I started realizing that most of the guys in prison have under a 5th grade education level. I didn't pay attention to that fact till this federal bit, but during that 10 year bit in state, I took some college classes for business. I was still doing some stupid stuff. I still had that hustle in me. But I started planning on coming home to start a business because I have a business mind. And so I was like, you're too smart. Like when I was in college, I made the dean's list. They asked me to join the scholars, whatever that little sorority is. I made the president's list. I had a 4.0 GPA at Westmoreland County Community College. But I came home. I came home with good intentions, but without the right direction. And I ended up getting back on that road. That's when I met your uncle.
Okay, you guys did time together.
Yeah, I met him during the state bit. One of my young guys, one of my nephews from the streets came through probably after I had like 8 years in, and he knew Papa. And he moved on the block that I was on, and then Papa came to the jail later, and then we all, we used to eat together. They was a little younger, so I used to, keep them in line, keep them from, jumping on people like, come on, man, your objective is to get out of jail. You know what I mean? That's going to keep you here. So Papa went home first, then Mike Jones went home, and then when I came home, Papa came and hollered at me. Bought me a winter coat.
I heard so many people talk about the things that he's done.
Yeah, he was good. He was good people's, man. He was good people's. He told me when I get out, because he knew I had a business in mind. I always sold clothes. I used to go to New York. See, I used to boost, but in 91, when I first started selling drugs, when I first started selling drugs, at some point I started really like, no, you need to do something different. Get back to the clothes. It was some guys that was selling clothes, and I used to spend a lot of money with them. And I was talking to the guy one day, and he was like, all you got to do is go up New York to the garment district, get the stuff cheap, bring it back. So I had my dad take me up there. We got a lot of family up New York, so they told us where to go. I started buying clothes. Now, the money with the clothes was just as fast. It's just that everything I did was like a hustle. I didn't run it like a business. And I was gambling with the money. Like I had a serious gambling habit. So during the 10 years, I was going to come home, get some clothes, and run it like a business. Because like I said, I used to hit the outskirts like Uniontown. I stopped in Uniontown and make like $4,000. I used to, and I was known everywhere, Clareton, all the little outskirts. I messed it with the city a little bit, but not all the money was outside the city. So I came home, and that was my intention. And then another thing that I seen, I don't know how much time we got, but I seen that they started bringing a lot of young people into the prison, like around my last years. And then the guards were getting younger. Like the older guards, there was like a rule in prison, like the inmates run the jail, and the guards they're just there to supervise, to keep the order, but they stay in their lane. Well, they start bringing in a bunch of young guards that was, that used to want to flex, little young guys just got out of college. I don't know why they was coming to the prisons, but they should have been just getting out of the Marines or the Army or something, and they just wanted to. And so the young black kids that was locked up was clashing, and they didn't even see that they ain't had no win. So it was just like they was getting done bad. I went to the hole like right before I came home, and I hadn't been in the hole. I had been out of that hole 10 years. I went to the hole when I first got to the jail. I was there for 60 days. I got caught bringing some weed in. They gave me a case too. And then I had been in the hole in like 9 years. And then I went back under investigation. They ended up letting me out. But being in the hole, like towards the end of my bit, that's when I seen it. I was like, man, I got to get out here and do something for these youth. So I wanted I was going to start my clothing store, which I had a blueprint. It was going to be like the hypest store in the world. I was going to franchise it, and then I was going to start rewarding the kids for going to school with the material, with the J's, with the cars and scholarships. But I got out here, and I wasn't used to looking at price tags. So I was doing that for a minute, trying to do the right thing, and it was just pulling me back and end up back in the streets.
So why do you think that happens where people like you, you're obviously an intelligent guy. You talked about even knowing the law and, things like that, business mindset. Why do you think it's so hard for men, especially black men, to get out and do the right thing?
You got to get tired of it, for one. For two, it's easy to get pulled back in because when you're used to having money and used to getting it fast and easy, it's addictive. Like, it's hard to switch from that to getting up and having to do what somebody tell you to do. And it's a thing where now I never worked. I had one job my whole life. When I came home from doing the 10 years, I got a job. And everybody that knew me was like, you ain't working. You only there because to get out the halfway house. When you get out that halfway house, you're going to be out of there. And I didn't. And I stayed there. Matter of fact, I stayed there until like 8 months before I went back to the feds.
Do you think it also has to do with like not having guidance?
I read a book this time, and it broke down what happened with me. The foundation of the book said that it's direction, not intention, that determines destination. I had great intentions when I got out, but I got on a road that leads back to prison. You're only going where the road you get on leads to. You're not going to success on a road that leads to failure. You're not going to life on a road that leads to death. And I got back on that road. And even though I had a plan and I was going to get out and do this, when I went to jail, this was the first time that I ever went to prison and had something. I had bought a house. I had a duplex also. I mean, I had a bunch of cars. I had a bunch of money. I had a bunch of things. And I found myself on my way back to federal prison this time.
Yeah, but I want to talk about how you got out or tried to get out on compassionate release. And can you talk about why?
2013, I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. Now, when I got back to the feds, first thing you do in jail is start working out. So I went to work out, and I went to do a push-up, and I couldn't push myself up. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do one push-up? Like, that's impossible. If I hadn't worked out for 10 years, I could still jump on the ground and do 20 push-ups. Like, at least 10, I couldn't do one. And I'm like, what is wrong? And so I went to the pull-up bar, and I couldn't do a pull-up. And I'm like, this is crazy. All right, so I started doing exercises that I could do, jumping jacks, walking, running the stairs and stuff like that. But my legs started, I started seeing my legs was doing something weird. So when I got designated, they sent me to California, which their medical in California is just a problem. Like, you're not getting anything. So I wanted to get checked out there, but the lady, the nurses, the doctors, everybody thought I was trying to get a pair of diabetic shoes. They had these nice leather shoes that they give to diabetics. And I was like, I don't need no shoes. I just want to find out. And they was like, nah, you ain't getting no shoes. I was like, so when I got to McKean, I was out there for 20 months. When I transferred back and I went to Pennsylvania, I got checked out. Whatever this count is, I forget what the name of the thing, but the normal range is like 90, and mine was like 1,600. And they was like something seriously wrong, so they did some blood tests, and it came back muscular dystrophy.
What exactly is that?
Muscular dystrophy it's a muscle disease where your muscles just deteriorate over time, and you can't get the strength back. So they give you a steroid, and they tell you to exercise to maintain the strength that you have longer.
So at this time where you're getting transferred and everything, your muscles, you're still able to walk and everything, but it's just your muscles wasn't as strong as they were.
Yeah.
When did it get bad?
Well, when I was in California, like 2 times I went to like run, like they called, the move was on, and you got to move during the time that the move is on. Once they shut the move, the guard will lock the door and you can't go. So I was in the library and they was leaving, and the lady was like, 1 minute, I'm locking this door. And so I like tried to speed up and my legs just gave out. And I fell and I got up and I'm like, what the heck? And it did that twice. And then again, I started working out. They had weights out there and I couldn't push nothing. And sometimes my leg would give out. So once I got diagnosed, they gave me a cane. So I was just walking with a cane. And every once in a while, I step and my legs won't be able to hold me and I go down. At that time, I was able to get up myself. But probably about 2 years, they transferred me to a medical center and I got a walker. And then I had the walker for about another 2 years, 3 years, and then I kept falling. My legs kept getting weaker and weaker where I couldn't hold myself up. Sometimes I couldn't even get up off the bed. And then I went in the wheelchair. I filed for compassionate relief in 2015. They denied it. The warden that denied it told me to appeal it because she wasn't sure that her interpretation of the program statement surrounding compassionate relief was right. And I told her, well, if I could show you where you're not right and show you the right interpretation, will you reconsider? She said, yeah. I showed her. She said, send it out. I just want to get another opinion. I told her, I said, they're going to go with you. They went with her. And not only did they go with her, they announced it. When I got to the medical center, they had put it on the computers. So they announced it across the whole BOP, her interpretation, which program statement had 3 categories. It had, 2 categories. Mine was in the debilitating category. The other one is when you're going to die, if you got so much time to live.
Okay.
I forget the word for it. There's a specific word for it. And then there's the debilitating. Under the debilitating, it has 2 prongs. You have an incurable disease. You're losing the ability to do your everyday life things. Or you have the degenerate injury from which you won't recover. But the interpretation of the program statement had a or between the 2 of them. So after the second one, it says a debilitating injury from which you won't recover, and it says, and you're confined to your bed or chair for 50% or more of the day. At the time, I wasn't confined to my chair. I was in a walker. I was still walking. She said that you got to be confined to your chair, and I'm like, no, there's incurable diseases that don't confine you to a chair. Blindness, you're blind. You know what I mean? You're not confined to a chair. If you got AIDS, eventually you'll be confined to it. You know what I mean? So her interpretation was wrong. So when I did end up getting in the wheelchair, I refiled in 2018.
So basically you had to wait until it got worse for you to get out on that. They
denied me in 18.
So you got denied twice before they actually accepted it?
I got denied so many times. I ended up having to go to court. The First Step Act, that's how I got out. When Trump signed the First Step Act on December 20th, 2018, it allowed me to file in the court. And even when they filed the First Step Act, everybody interpreted that wrong. Everybody, the whole country, everybody except for me. And then I had to win in appeals court. And when I won, it changed the whole precedent for the whole country. Everybody, I thought maybe I was crazy, but I'm like, even the people that's fighting for reform, organization called Families Against Mandatory Minimums, they even interpreted the wrong way. All the jailhouse lawyers, everybody was telling me I was crazy. And I was saying it doesn't make no sense if what y'all saying is true, because it said that the real interpretation was 30 days after you file a compassionate relief with the warden. If you're not out of jail, you can file it, because the people that had terminal illnesses, that's the other category. People that had terminal illnesses were dying, and the whole process to go through administrative remedy takes about 18 months. People got 6 months to live, they're going to die. And they were interpreting it, saying that if the warden answers your request within the 30 days, then you got to go through the administrative remedy. I said, that doesn't make a sense. That makes the law moot. Then all the jail has to do is deny everybody within 30 days. And then the law doesn't change anything. No, the law says that if I'm not out of prison, that ain't what it actually stated. It said that 30 days from the receipt of your request for compassionate relief, you could file for the court. Everybody interpreted it to mean 30 days if he act on it within 30 days. I said, don't say act on. It says receipt of. It don't say act on.
So you were actually accurate, and they were kind of basically wrong.
Yeah, they were wrong.
Let's leave with a positive note and something positive, maybe to the street guys that's still out there. Anything that you would like to say?
Well, the thing that's in the street is a spiritual thing. That's what people ain't addressing. We talking about demonic activity in these kids. The way they're killing, they don't even know what they're doing. I do court watch. We've been focusing on decertification hearings, because it's a lot of kids in Allegheny County Jail, and they're being offered a plea for 25 years or go to trial and get life. And trying to throw all these programs at this, the church need to be more active in this, because what these kids going through is demonic, and there's only one thing that could fight that, and that's Jesus Christ. And that's where my transformation came from. Before I went to federal prison, the day before, I prayed, and I said, and I prayed with my heart, like it wasn't, and I didn't have no case. I had a lot of money. I had a lot of women. I had a lot of material. I just had a whole lot of baggage too. And I didn't believe in the stuff that I believe in today. And I just said, if you're real, you can have this. You can have all of this. Give me something different. And I went to the feds the next day. And when I tell you I wasn't going to catch this federal case, I wasn't going to catch this case. The feds wasn't looking at me. When they was in my house, they was asking me, who is you? Like, you're not on the DEA's radar. You ain't on the FBI's radar. You ain't on no narcotic agency's radar. And you got keys coming in the mail. Who are you? And I was like, I ain't nobody. It was an answered prayer. And I didn't believe in Jesus and all that stuff. But he answered that prayer that I prayed the night before, and I got into jail, and I met somebody, and they had a peace that nobody else had, and I wanted that, and he gave me the Bible, and I never looked back. It changed my life. I got a lot of programs. I'm teaching Bible studies.
Great.
I'm building something for the street, for these guys in the streets. I'm building programs. I got programs built for guys in prison. I was just enjoying my freedom, building a foundation. But Family Unit Company, remember that name.
Family Unit Company. We're looking forward to everything that you have coming. I thank you so much, and I hope someone can listen to your story and get something out of it, something positive.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Yep.